Emily Carter is 28 years old, a successful architect living in Seattle. Her career is thriving, but her personal life is empty. 3 years earlier, her mother died from cancer. Her father, Thomas Carter, retreated into isolation afterward. Once a respected forest ranger in Montana, Thomas slowly cut himself off from everyone, choosing to spend most of his time alone in the mountains. Emily visited only occasionally. Every visit ended in arguments. Thomas always insisted that city life was changing her. Emily believed he cared more about forests than family. Neither realized those conversations would become their final memories together. One cold November morning, Emily receives a call from the county sheriff. Her father has died from a heart attack while hiking near Black Pine Falls. The news leaves her numb. She attends the funeral in the tiny mountain town of Ashwood Ridge. Only a handful of old rangers and townspeople attend. Nobody speaks much. Instead, they exchange strange looks whenever Thomas's name is mentioned. After the funeral, the family lawyer hands Emily an envelope. She expects deeds, bank accounts, or retirement savings. Instead, she inherits only one thing: a property deed. Location: Black Pine Falls. Nothing else. No money, no house, no explanation. Confused, Emily asks the lawyer. The lawyer quietly says Thomas sold everything else years ago. He kept only the waterfall. Emily is stunned. Who leaves someone a waterfall? Before leaving, the lawyer gives her another item: a worn leather journal. Inside the first page, Thomas wrote, "If you're reading this, I'm gone. Don't sell the falls until you've seen what I couldn't protect." The message raises more questions than answers. Back in Seattle, Emily ignores it for weeks. Eventually, unpaid property taxes arrive. If she refuses ownership, the county will auction the land. Annoyed, she decides to visit once before selling it. She drives nearly 10 hours into Montana. The deeper she travels, the more familiar everything feels. Pine forests, snow-covered mountains, old memories. She remembers childhood camping trips, fishing with her father, building tiny bridges across creeks, watching waterfalls together. Her father often repeated one strange phrase: "Some mountains hide people. Others hide secrets." At the time, she laughed. Now those words seem heavier. She reaches Ashwood Ridge. The town appears frozen in time. Population under 400. Wooden storefronts, old diners, weathered cabins. Nearly everyone seems to recognize her. An elderly waitress named Martha immediately knows who she is. She whispers, "You're Thomas's daughter." Emily nods. The entire diner becomes unusually quiet. Martha eventually says, "He loved those falls more than anything." Emily asks why. Martha hesitates before answering. Some things are safer not knowing. Emily grows irritated. Everyone speaks in riddles. No one offers actual answers. She rents a cabin for the night. That evening she reads more of Thomas's journal. Most entries describe wildlife observations, bird migrations, river conditions, forest fires. Then the tone changes. Several entries become paranoid. Someone keeps coming back. They still haven't found it. I won't let them destroy it. If I disappear, trust the water. Emily assumes grief affected his mental health. The next morning she hikes toward Black Pine Falls. The trail is beautiful. Towering cedar trees, fog rolling through valleys, sunlight piercing the forest canopy. After 2 hours she finally hears roaring water. The waterfall is breathtaking. Nearly 100 feet tall, crystal clear water crashes into an emerald pool below. She walks around taking photographs. The property appears worthless. No buildings, no roads, nothing unusual. She prepares to leave. Then she notices something odd. Birds avoid flying directly in front of one section of the waterfall. Instead, they curve around it, as though something blocks their path. She steps closer. The mist thickens. Looking carefully, she notices darkness behind part of the falling water, almost like a hollow. Curious, she removes her hiking jacket. Carefully she walks through the freezing curtain of water. Her boots slip on wet stone. She catches herself, then freezes. Behind the waterfall is a narrow cave. The cave extends 30 feet before widening. At the far end stands something impossible. A perfectly preserved wooden cabin, hidden completely behind the waterfall. No maps mention it, no roads reach it. The structure looks abandoned, yet strangely untouched by time. Smoke stains remain on the chimney. Lantern hooks still hang outside. The front door is slightly open. Emily slowly approaches. Inside she discovers furniture covered with dust. Books, maps, fireplace, a dining table set for one. Everything appears frozen, as if someone simply walked away yesterday. On the wall hangs an old photograph. Thomas Carter, much younger, standing beside another man Emily has never seen. Written beneath the frame, "Keepers of Black Pine." Before Emily can understand the meaning, a floorboard creaks upstairs. Someone, or something, is still inside the hidden cabin. Emily stood motionless in the doorway, her flashlight trembling in her hand. The creak she'd heard from upstairs had stopped. Only the distant roar of the waterfall echoed through the hidden cabin, muffled by the thick stone walls surrounding it. For a long moment, she wondered if she should leave. The sensible part of her mind urged her to turn around, hike back to town, and pretend she'd never found this impossible place. But then she looked again at the photograph hanging beside the fireplace. Her father, nearly 30 years younger, standing beside a silver-haired man with a weathered face. Both of them smiled proudly in front of this very cabin. Someone had written across the bottom in fading ink, "Every keeper protects something worth losing everything for." Emily whispered the words aloud. Keeper. She had never heard her father use that title. Taking a deep breath, she climbed the narrow staircase. The upper floor consisted of only 2 rooms. The first bedroom looked untouched for years. A handmade quilt covered the bed. Old boots sat neatly beside it. A rusted lantern hung from the ceiling. Dust coated nearly every surface except one small writing desk. Someone had cleaned it recently. Emily frowned. That was impossible. The cabin had clearly been abandoned, hadn't it? She slowly approached the desk. Inside the top drawer, she found dozens of carefully folded maps. None showed roads. Instead, they depicted rivers, cliffs, caves, and ancient trees, all marked with tiny symbols she didn't recognize. One symbol appeared repeatedly, a circle surrounded by 3 pine trees. The same symbol was carved into the wooden desk itself. She snapped several photos with her phone. No signal, no internet, just as expected. As she opened the final drawer, something caught her eye. A brass key. Attached to it was a leather tag. Archives. The second room was locked. The brass key fit perfectly. The old wooden door groaned open. Emily immediately realized this wasn't a bedroom. It was a library. Floor-to-ceiling shelves filled every wall. Hundreds of journals, leather-bound ledgers, survey books, hand-drawn maps, weather records dating back over a century. Everything had been meticulously organized. At the center of the room stood a massive oak table. On it rested a leather journal far newer than the others. Her father's handwriting covered the first page. If you've reached this room, then you've already chosen curiosity over comfort. Emily smiled despite herself. That sounded exactly like him. She sat down and began reading. The journal revealed a side of Thomas Carter she'd never known. He wrote about seasons instead of calendars. He measured time by snowmelt, bird migrations, and blooming wildflowers. Each entry described patrols through the surrounding mountains, monitoring wolves, protecting eagle nests, recording water quality. Everything changed. 3 strangers arrived today. They pretended to be hikers. They asked too many questions about the waterfall, They weren't interested in nature. Several pages later, someone searched the Eastern Trail while I was away. Nothing was taken. They're looking for something they believe exists. Emily's heartbeat quickened. She flipped ahead. The entries became increasingly detailed. Her father described unfamiliar drones flying above the valley, satellite equipment, metal detectors, nighttime campfires hidden beneath camouflage nets. He never mentioned police. Instead, he always wrote the same sentence: "The mountain must decide who earns its trust." Emily closed the journal. None of it made sense. If criminals had been searching here for years, why hadn't anyone stopped them? A loud bang interrupted her thoughts. She froze. Someone had slammed the cabin's front door. Footsteps, heavy boots, more than one person. Voices echoed downstairs. Emily extinguished her flashlight instantly. The cabin fell into darkness. A deep male voice drifted upward. "I told you, someone has been here." Another answered, "The dust is disturbed." Emily's pulse raced. She slowly backed away from the staircase. There was nowhere to hide. Then she noticed something unusual. One of the bookshelves didn't quite touch the wall. She pressed against it. Nothing happened. She looked closer. A small wooden carving of 3 pine trees sat near the shelf's edge. She'd seen on the maps. Emily twisted it. With a dull click, the entire bookshelf silently swung inward. A hidden passage. Without hesitation, she slipped inside. The shelf closed behind her. Seconds later, footsteps climbed the stairs. She held her breath. The voices sounded only inches away. "They searched this room." "No, they're still here." Emily pressed herself against the cold stone wall. She heard drawers opening, books falling, furniture scraping across the floor. Then one of the men stopped. "Boss." "What?" "I found a fresh footprint." Silence. Then another voice. Calm. Older. Confident. So Thomas finally told someone. Emily memorized the voice immediately. It carried authority, patience, danger. The hidden passage sloped downward beneath the cabin. It was barely wide enough for one person. Tiny lantern brackets lined the walls, though none had been lit for years. The tunnel continued for nearly 10 minutes. Eventually it opened into a vast natural cavern. Emily gasped. She had never imagined anything like it. Crystal formations rose from the ground like frozen waterfalls. Underground streams shimmered beneath pale shafts of sunlight, filtering through cracks high above. The air felt warmer, cleaner, almost alive. Ancient cedar roots stretched through the cave ceiling, creating enormous natural arches. Birdsong echoed, despite there being no visible birds. She stepped forward carefully. The cave floor had been reinforced with old wooden walkways. Someone had built paths through this underground world. Near the center stood a circular stone platform. Its surface contained hundreds of carved names, each followed by years. OL starting 1889, lie, PPP, lie, PPP, lie, PPP, lie, PPP, Thomas Carter. Emily gently touched her father's name. One line remained blank. She frowned, then noticed fresh boot prints surrounding the platform. The strangers had been here before. A soft voice echoed behind her. "You shouldn't be standing there." Emily spun around. An elderly woman stepped from the shadows, carrying a lantern. She looked nearly 70. Gray hair tied neatly beneath a wool hood. Her expression remained calm, not surprised, almost as if she'd been expecting Emily. "You knew my father." The woman smiled sadly. "I knew every keeper." Emily stared. "What is this place?" The woman slowly raised her lantern. "This mountain remembers people." Emily frowned. "I don't understand." "Good." The woman began walking. People who understand too quickly usually come for the wrong reasons. Emily hesitated before following. The elderly woman introduced herself as Eleanor. She explained she'd lived alone in another hidden valley for nearly 40 years. Only the keepers knew she existed. When Thomas died, she knew someone would eventually find the cabin. I hoped it would be you. Emily asked why. Eleanor stopped beside an underground lake so still it reflected the ceiling perfectly. Because your father never protected treasure. She pointed toward the crystal-clear water. He protected memory. Emily looked confused. Eleanor knelt beside the lake. Beneath the surface rested hundreds of carved wooden boxes, perfectly preserved underwater. Families, letters, photographs, journals, artwork, entire histories. Whenever mountain communities disappear through avalanches, fires, or abandonment, the keepers secretly preserved what remained. Everything forgotten by the outside world found its way here. This isn't a vault, Eleanor whispered. It's a promise. Emily suddenly understood why Thomas sold everything else. The waterfall wasn't valuable. What it hid was priceless. A distant explosion shook the cavern. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Eleanor's face changed instantly. They found another entrance. Emily's stomach tightened. Who are they? Eleanor answered quietly. People who believe every secret has a price. Another explosion echoed, closer this time. Lights appeared far across the cavern. Flashlights, voices, the strangers had entered. Eleanor handed Emily her lantern. Your father left you something. What? The choice he never had. Before Emily could ask another question, Eleanor disappeared through a narrow passage hidden among the rocks. Emily turned toward the approaching lights. The older man's voice echoed once more. I know you're here. Silence. Then we're not looking for you. We're looking for what your father died protecting. Emily tightened her grip on the lantern. For the first time in her life, she understood that inheriting the waterfall had never been about land. It had been about becoming the next guardian of a secret powerful enough that strangers had spent years searching for it. And now, they knew she had found it first. Emily stood in the glow of the lantern, her heart pounding as the strangers' flashlights danced across the cavern walls. The older man stepped into view first. He was in his early 60s, dressed in weatherproof hiking gear that looked more military than recreational. His silver hair was neatly combed despite the damp cave air, and his expression was calm, almost friendly. Behind him stood 4 younger men carrying climbing equipment, drones, and heavy backpacks. None of them pointed a weapon. That somehow made Emily trust them even less. The older man removed his gloves. My name is Adrian Voss. Emily said nothing. I've been searching for this place for 22 years, and my father spent 22 years keeping you away from it. A faint smile crossed Adrian's face. He certainly did. Adrian slowly looked around the cavern. His eyes weren't fixed on gold or gemstones. Instead, they lingered on the crystal lake, the carved wooden boxes beneath the water, and the ancient cedar roots stretching across the ceiling. He whispered, "It really exists." Emily stepped backward. You need to leave. I'm afraid I can't. Why? Because people outside these mountains are about to destroy everything above them. Emily frowned. Adrian opened a waterproof case and removed satellite photographs. He spread them across a flat stone. The images showed miles of surrounding forest. Large sections were marked with bright red lines. Logging permits, mining surveys, road expansion plans, hydroelectric development. Emily's stomach tightened. The valley has already been sold, Adrian said quietly. The government approved several commercial projects 6 months ago. Emily stared at him. My father never mentioned this. He didn't want you carrying the burden. Adrian reached into his backpack. I believe this belongs to you. He carefully placed a weathered leather notebook on the stone. Emily recognized the handwriting instantly. Her father's. My team recovered it from one of his abandoned ranger stations after he died. She opened it carefully. Unlike the journals in the cabin, this one wasn't filled with observations. It was addressed directly to her. Adrian was supposed to become the next keeper. Emily blinked. What? She asked. Adrian nodded. I refused. Why? She pressed. Because I believed hiding this place forever was impossible. Thomas and Adrian had once worked together as young conservation officers. Thomas believed absolute secrecy was the only way to protect the valley. Adrian believed carefully revealing its ecological importance would earn it permanent legal protection. Their disagreement grew into a bitter divide. Thomas remained the keeper. Adrian left. For more than 2 decades they never spoke again. Yet neither man betrayed the mountain. They simply chose different paths. Emily realized the story she'd imagined, a greedy treasure hunter chasing hidden riches, had been wrong. This was never about money. It was about philosophy. Hide the secret forever, or trust the world with it. A distant rumble interrupted the conversation. This one wasn't underground. It came from above. Adrian checked his satellite communicator. His face went pale. They've started. Emily grabbed the device. Bulldozers, excavators, construction crews. They had begun clearing trees several miles downstream. The permits had already taken effect. Within weeks, roads would reach the waterfall. Once that happened, thousands of people would eventually discover the hidden cabin. The mountain would never be the same again. Eleanor led them deeper into the cavern. At its center stood an enormous circular stone, unlike anything Emily had seen before. Its surface was covered with engraved names. Each belonged to a keeper. In the middle rested a brass compass. Eleanor carefully lifted it. Inside the compass was a folded letter. Thomas's final message. If you're standing here, then the mountain has already chosen. Keeping secrets isn't enough anymore. Protection must become law. Don't hide this place. Prove why it deserves to survive. Emily's eyes filled with tears. Her father had changed his mind before he died. The group hurried back toward the cabin. Adrian contacted trusted environmental scientists. Emily called the county sheriff. Eleanor gathered every journal documenting more than 100 years of wildlife records. The evidence was overwhelming. Rare plants, endangered animals, ancient groundwater systems, historical records of vanished settlements. No commercial project could legally continue if this information reached federal authorities first. But they had less than 24 hours. As dawn broke, helicopters appeared over the valley. Not construction helicopters, government aircraft, wildlife officers, federal investigators, environmental agencies. The surveys confirmed what Thomas had documented for decades. The valley contained one of the most significant untouched ecosystems in the region. Emergency conservation orders immediately halted every development permit. Heavy machinery shut down before reaching the waterfall. The mountain was safe. 1 year later, the hidden cabin looked different. Its roof had been repaired, the windows replaced, the old fireplace restored. Yet nothing modern disturbed its character. Solar panels hidden among the trees quietly powered essential equipment. Scientists visited only with special permission. The waterfall remained absent from tourist maps. Only a handful of trusted researchers knew the truth. Emily left her architecture firm in Seattle. Instead, she founded a nonprofit dedicated to restoring historic ranger cabins and protecting remote wilderness sites across North America. The hidden cabin became both a research station and a living memorial to every keeper who had devoted their lives to preserving the mountains. One quiet autumn evening, Emily sat on the cabin porch, watching the waterfall shimmer in the setting sun. She unfolded her father's final letter once more. At the bottom, beneath everything else, was a single handwritten sentence she had somehow overlooked. I couldn't leave you a fortune, so I left you a reason to build one that matters. Emily smiled through tears. For years, she had believed her father had abandoned her emotionally. Now she understood. Everything he had done, even selling his possessions, even leaving her only a waterfall, had been an act of faith. He believed that one day she would see beyond what something was worth, and recognize what it was worth protecting. Several months later, a father and his young daughter stopped at the overlook above Black Pine Falls. The little girl pointed toward the curtain of water. "It looks like there's something behind the waterfall." Her father laughed. "Probably just shadows." Emily, who had been quietly checking a nearby trail, overheard them. She smiled, but said nothing. Some mysteries didn't need to disappear. They simply needed someone willing to protect them. As evening settled over the valley, mist drifted across the falls, concealing the hidden cabin once again. Deep within the mountain, the journals of generations of keepers rested safely, waiting for the day another guardian might be needed. And somewhere in the endless sound of rushing water, it almost seemed as though Thomas Carter's voice still echoed through the valley, not as a ghost, but as a reminder. The greatest inheritance isn't what you own. It's what you choose to protect.